graders, it's Mrs. Thompson. We're in section 8.2, example 2, and I'm going to show you how to find the axis of symmetry in a couple different ways. One way is using your zeros, like we learned about in example 1, and also from your vertex, which we've also learned about. So the axis of symmetry, what I want you to imagine is a vertical line that splits your forehead, top of your head, down between your eyes, down your nose, all the way down. That is your axis of symmetry. I could fold myself on that line and my fingers and hands, arms, shoulders would touch, as would my legs, okay, and my feet. And so if you can fold yourself or a figure on that imaginary vertical line and every point touches, each half touches exactly the other half, then it's got something called symmetry, and that vertical line is known as the axis of symmetry. You're basically splitting your parabola in half, okay? And your axis of symmetry always passes through the vertex. That's really important. I need you to get that. That vertical line always runs right through the middle of your vertex. Your vertex is the very, very center of your graph, and that is where you would fold your paper if you were trying to find that axis of symmetry, okay? So very simply, the axis of symmetry is the x value of your vertex. So like in letter A, if it's really clear what your vertex is, you see it, it is positive 2. Vertex is 2, 0. Then you can use your vertex to identify the axis of symmetry. Now I don't write out those words, I just shorthand it to AS. And AS is axis of symmetry. And since it's a line, and it's a vertical line, we're going to start it with x equals. All vertical lines have x equals. There's no y because vertical lines never cross the y. Hopefully you remember that from linear equations. And all you have to do is, if you know the x of your vertex, that number is also your axis of symmetry. Okay? So that's the relationship. If you know beyond a shadow of a doubt what your vertex is on your graph, then you automatically know that vertical line that runs through that vertex, your axis of symmetry, is the x of your vertex. Kind of rhymes, okay? So C is just like A. I'm going to leave this one for extra credit for you. Identify the axis of symmetry in letter C. Now let me talk to you about B. There's another way to do B, especially if your vertex isn't very obvious. And I had to kind of, do some fancy footwork with B and D. I couldn't totally fit them both on the page. Just imagine that D goes a little bit deeper than it does, and B as well goes a lot deeper down the y-axis. Okay, so what if you can't really tell what the vertex is? Then you can use your zeros, okay? So if you have 2 zeros like we have in letter B, and I'll circle them, there's our zeros. We have a 0 at 1 and a 0 at 5. Then what you can do is average your 2 zeros together, and that number is your axis of symmetry. Okay, so if it's just, I can't tell from my vertex what it is, it doesn't seem really clear what my vertex is, then just add these two up. 1 plus 5 is 6, and then average those two numbers together, and you'll get 3. So your axis of symmetry is the imaginary line x equals 3, which is pretty close. If I had drawn my parabola a little bit more accurately, it probably would have gone right through that 3 on the x-axis. So remember, the axis of symmetry is a vertical line that goes right through the center of your graph. It's vertical, so it's going, I could fold my paper on that vertical line, and the right side of my parabola would touch the left side of my parabola with no trouble at all. Okay? Now D is just like B, and I'm going to give extra credit if you can identify the axis of symmetry from your 2 zeros there. Okay? So 2 strategies, 2 ways to find the axis of symmetry. 1, 2, 3, go.